Let's move on if we can, though. You brought up Moses Itama, who is probably the most important fighter, even if it's not the most competitive fight on the undercard. And I say that because Itama is, 19 years old, is already seen as potentially being the future of the heavyweight division. And that was the thrust of my Fighting Words column on Boxing Scene this past weekend, where I was wondering, after Usyk Fury 2, what does the heavyweight division have in store, not just for the winner, but in general? And I broke this down into a few categories. There's the champions and the title holders, there's the mandatory challengers, there's guys who are demolished but have not yet departed, and then there's the unknowns. And so, if we may, let's go category by category and talk about what we think could be happening in the future. So when I talked about the champions and the title holders, I was wondering, could we get Usyk Fury 3? And where does the winner of Daniel Dubois versus Joseph Parker, which is taking place in February, fit into the picture?
This is a fascinating concept, and a concept which could come to life. And there will be people saying, hey, Darren David, you can't be talking about Usyk Fury 3. We've not had Usyk Fury 2 yet. It might be diabolical. It might be terrible. They might both announce their retirement on the night. And that's true. But look, we know how the boxing world works just like you do, and there's a good chance of this stuff happening. So Daniel Dubois versus Joseph Parker is interesting in terms of the outcome of that and what could happen next because of this. Would Tyson Fury, if he comes through, want to fight a young gun, explosive fighter who is just doing this? And for those who obviously can't see me because they're listening, is just going up, is going upwards in every sense in terms of speed, experience, power, aggressiveness, just absolutely everything. I don't think he would. Would Alexander Usyk fancy that rematch now? Now we've seen what Daniel Dubois has done to Anthony Joshua at the National Stadium. That, again, is just like a massive question mark. I'm not sure. And then the other side of it is Joseph Parker and Tyson Fury are good pals, really good friends. And the reason Joseph Parker trains in the UK is because of Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury got him over from New Zealand, put him up in some digs, and has basically allowed him initially to train in his gym and be a part of the squad. And they are very, very good friends indeed. Would they fight each other? I don't think so. You wrote about it all in Boxing Scene. So for people who haven't read that yet, on this topic, what is your thoughts and feelings around it?
I think the fights for both of them are more likely if it's Dubois as the winner. I think Usyk Dubois would finally settle that controversy over whether the body shot or low blow that Dubois put Usyk down with was wrongly ruled in, whether Dubois deserved that victory or whether Usyk got a fair win. I also think that Fury would be more likely to face Dubois, not just because of the reason that you mentioned, his friendship with Parker, but also because it's a bigger event. But I don't think that would be the first pick for Fury. I think if Fury beats Usyk, he would still go for a fight with Anthony Joshua. There is less luster on that fight than there once was, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I think Fury, being toward the tail end of his career, still wants the big events or the biggest possible events, and you can't blame him for that. So beyond that, we mentioned the February 22nd fight between Parker and Dubois, but there's another fight on that card, Zhilei Zhang versus Agit Kabayel, and I'm sorry if I got that name wrong. That is for the WBC's interim title, which would give them a potential shot at the winner. There's Kubrat Pulev, and I can't believe I'm mentioning that name when it's almost 2025, but his recent win over Mahmoud Char gave him the WBA regular heavyweight title, which ostensibly gives him a shot. And then there's a potential fight between Martin Bakole and Efe Ajagba, and that would get them a shot via the IBF. So there's all these guys who could potentially be lining up to face the winner. Do any of those intrigue you more than the rest?
I think with Zhilei Zhang we've seen this might come back to bite me on the backside. But I think with him, we've probably seen the best of him. He's certainly getting on now in age, isn't he? That being said, it is the heavyweight division. He is explosive. He's got some serious knockout power. But when you look at Kabayel, who is 25-0, knocked out 17 people at 32 years old, which is a pretty peak age when it comes to the heavyweights. And he's also a fighter who lots and lots of people rate very highly indeed. I think he's the sort of person who could come through and contend properly in the heavyweight division. How long? I think he'd give Daniel Dubois a very good fight. So is the question though that could he end up fighting Tyson Fury or Alexander Usyk? Or are you thinking about this in a way that once those guys fight, they will choose not to fight one of the winners of these fights in terms of their mandatories and relinquish the belts? How do you see that playing out?
I think my answer to your either or question is yes. I don't want to just frame this in terms of who is going to be most likely or most exciting to face the winner. But I also am intrigued in terms of how one or more of these people might fit into that top tier, those big fights. I don't know that Kabayel has a name. I know he doesn't quite have a name yet that resonates with people beyond the hardcore, but that could begin depending on how he performed against Zhilei Zhang. I know that there's not really an appetite for Kubrat Pulev to be in with these big men, these big names. And I'm kind of hoping that the WBA, as properly maligned as they are for having multiple belts, that Pulev kind of plays interference with whoever the WBA regular challenger is and maybe gets knocked off at some point so that we can see that person then move on to face the champions instead. I love the idea of the Bakole Ajagba fight. I think that is proper violence, and I would love to see them against the winner against anybody else. So for me, it's the Zhang Kabayel fight and the Bakole Ajagba fight. And if we get a third fight between Usyk and Fury, or if we see the winner of that fight face the winner of Dubois versus Parker, I would love to have kind of unofficial mini tournament where the Zhang Kabayel winner faces the Bakole Ajagba winner. We both know that's not what's going to happen. When one person gets a mandatory position, they're going to sit in that position so that they can either get the big payday or that they can then inherit the world title when the champion doesn't face them, as we saw with Daniel Dubois. Not that Dubois did anything wrong in that case. There are, though, other names. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, how good would a mini... We spoke about the World Boxing Series, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago? Can you imagine a heavyweight version of that now?
I would love that. I would love to have the best facing the best no matter what. I will say one benefit of Turki Al-Sheikh's involvement, and we've talked about the absolutely fair criticism and questions that need to be asked, but one benefit that's happened is there are so many heavyweight fights that have happened that it's been like an unofficial round robin, and guys have moved forward because of their victories. Joseph Parker's entire career has been resuscitated because of that. And we've seen guys get second chances or third chances, which has led to them earning their way back into the picture.